This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 409 for Wednesday, July 21st, 2021. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we're into. Joining me this week, Alastair McFly is back. You can find him at Alastair McFly on all the social media that matters, and on Long Range Sensors, a Star Trek retrospective podcast. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you for having me back. Always fun to be here.
You know what's also fun? Air conditioners. I don't remember whether I talked about this last week or not. My air conditioner that I ordered on June 30th finally arrived on July 15th.
I forget that air conditioners are a thing because for us in England, they're not. I've been here, 7 years? I still don't have an air conditioner because every time I remember, it's because people are talking about how they're all sold out.
Right.
So I'm suddenly in that, okay, now I remember I need one and I can't get one. What I need to do is set a reminder to get one around Christmas time in the winter when nobody's buying them.
Actually, end of the summer. Like end of the summer when they're on sale, trying to move stock. Same thing with patio furniture. You need that's how I got my little bistro table outside. Is I waited until the end of the season and then Walmart had it on for like half price. So trying to move stock. I paid full price for mine. I was expecting to pay full price for mine, but I was happy with the other model. So I bought an LG air conditioner 10 years ago. It was around $400, and I got 10 years out of it before it stopped working. And only the cooling part has stopped working. It's still a fan, like it still works as a fan. So I just went back to LG and said, look, it seems weird. It seems like brand loyalty, which is not normally a thing that I am associated with. But for track record and appliances, that seems pretty good. So there was an updated version. It has some weaknesses. And it was a slightly larger unit, and it was also black compared to some weird off-white color. So I splurged for something that's good for 350 square feet, which is not the size of my whole apartment. My whole apartment's bigger than that. But the main room with my studio door open and the hallway's door closed and stuff like that, that's about right. And lately, I actually haven't needed it for air conditioning. It's been mostly dehumidifying stuff because in the Maritimes right now, it's been 100% humidity for like 3 days. Very, very, very sticky. And so it's been a godsend. I can't tell you the last time we had a heat wave through humidity a couple weeks ago, like I really felt ill at my desk, like sitting with a fan on me like a cartoon. Like I could feel, my hair blowing sideways. I had the fan up so high, and I just could not get any work done. So having the AC is great. I don't remember the exact model off the top of my head, but I mean, like there's only so many floor model LG air conditioners that you can find that are good for 350 square feet. So I'm sure you can find it, online. It has a remote, and some of the functions are only available on the remote, which drives me nuts because my apartment is not so big that I'm not, 10 feet from this thing that I couldn't just walk up to it and change the settings. I much prefer, as I think you've had this experience with a recent TV, I much prefer having some buttons on the unit. And this thing has, fan speed. It has mode. So like, fan, cooling, or dehumidify, and power on and off. You've got temperature adjustments. But the other model had a timer on it that you could set on the unit. Now, I'll confess I haven't read the entire instruction booklet, but like still, like it was all really obvious. I mean, I set this up and get it working without even reading the instructions. Like you turn it on, you press cool, you put the vent out the window, done. And so like with this one, the timer, because what I used to do is I used to walk over to it, turn it off before I left the house, and then go, it's going to take me about 2 hours to go get groceries. I'll have it come back on in about 90 minutes. So then it comes back on about a half an hour before you get home, and things are at least starting to cool down before you get back home again. And so this one, you have to use the remote to do that, which is just kind of just one more thing I've got to put AAA batteries in, which I don't care. Like, it just drives me nuts. The other thing that I did, which is why sometimes I kind of kick myself in the shorts for being a pack rat. I have a spare room, and the spare room basically just collects stuff. It's stuff that I can't throw out or don't want to throw in a landfill. It's stuff that needs to go to like a recycle depot, or, I have like clothing that piles up over time that I have to donate to charity or whatever. So there's just this pile of stuff in this other room. And that included the old hose and the old vent connector for the old air conditioner, which I'm no longer using because I don't use it on the cool mode because it doesn't put out any hot air anymore. So the new attachments that came with the new air conditioner all snap together, and they feel like they're pretty permanent. They look like they're going to be pretty permanent with you snapped them together. And I thought, I don't know if I want to do this, because if I can't move this from room to room, or if this doesn't fit, then it's going to be a problem. So I checked the small attachment for the window vent, and it doesn't fit in my patio door, which is unfortunate. And I could cut it, but it's a brand new thing, and I don't really have the best tool to cut it. So I just decided, you know what? Let's just see if I can make this work. And really all it took was a bit of packing tape, which feels silly to put on a brand new device. But basically I have my brand new air conditioner, but because it's so close to my patio door, like literally a couple of feet, not even, I'm using the old AC hose and AC vent because that fits in the door. Like that fits in the thing. Now, unfortunately, the old hose is a bigger diameter than the new hose. Otherwise, I could use the new attachments and just switch out the window attachments. But unfortunately, I have to use the hose as it connects to the air conditioner. Now, I'm sure I could probably go buy, like at Home Depot, I can probably just buy a hose. Like I could probably just buy a smaller diameter, hose or vent or something, and have two. And then that way I could move the AC unit from room to room if I needed to. Like, if it ever gets really hot, I'm going to have to move it into the studio and close the studio door. And you've been over to my place. The studio is like a little 8x10, so it would cool down very quickly. But so far it does the trick. It's just got a little bit. It's a more powerful unit than the other one, and it's got a little bit of a larger square footage that it will actually handle, which is good. The problem, I wheeled it into the bedroom one night to use it, and unfortunately it shuts off whenever it reaches temperature, which was waking me up through the night, which drives me nuts. The other one, what would happen with it when it hit like you set it to be like 20, 22 or 20 degrees Celsius for people that are listening. And when the old one reached that temperature, the fan would continue to go, but then the cooling unit would just stop cooling. So you'd hear it like shift gears very subtly, but the noise of the fan would stay constant, right? With this new one, the whole thing shuts off. So then it goes dead silent, which that either wakes you up, or when it starts back up again in 10 minutes, when of course the room goes up to 23 degrees and it kicks on again to bring it back down to 21, you're just like, this is the third time you've woken me up. So I'm sure there's a way. It's got a sleep mode on it, and I'm hoping that there's a way that I can say, like, just stay on regardless of temperature for like 6 hours. I'm okay if you shut off at 6 a.m. or whatever, that's fine. But like, just don't do the on off thing throughout the night, because the first night I got it going was problematic. Actually, that reminds me, the whole reason that I was cheesed off is because I was lying in bed awake because I got my second COVID vaccine last week. And so I am T-minus 11 days or something away from being fully vaccinated as the body does its thing, which will lead me into my next conversation. But I didn't have a bad experience, but there was definitely like a lot of being awake at night with a hot apartment and a sore arm, and I was just like, I just want the AC to stop waking me up. Like, that's all I want, And so I think I was more useless for about 36 to 48 hours because of lack of sleep, not necessarily because of any really gross symptoms. I was describing this to Laura because her shot's coming up later this month, and You know how you feel when you have to sneeze and you just can't sneeze and it drives you nuts. Like it almost hurts, right? So in the previous, the last time I got sick, which is a long time ago, probably when you and I were working together, actually, so like 4 or 5 years ago, I probably would have come down with something like the flu. And that achy feeling that you get before you get the fever, like you're coming home from a day and you're just like, I do not feel well. Like my hips hurt, my neck hurts, my back hurts. Everything just feels like it's going to crumple over. And then once you kind of take stock, you're like, oh no, I'm sick.
The oncoming storm.
Yeah. And then like 4 hours later, you get a fever and it's hot and you're sweaty and it's cold and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I felt like on the Friday. So about 24 hours after the shot, I got it at 10:30 in the morning on a Thursday. So basically the next day, I felt like that the entire day. It was that big body inhale of you're going to get sick. And then nothing happens. Right. So like the whole day, usually it lasts a couple hours, but it was the whole day of this kind of like schmeh of just this awful feeling. And then it went away. So like, as far as, reactions go, I think that was pretty mild. But I like to try and communicate to people because we're getting to the point in the country now where we've passed the US in terms of double vaccination percentage. But there's this stall because as you whittle down to the very important, like the last 40%, the last 20% of the country that's going to get vaccinated, now you're getting into the anti-vaxxers. Like now you're getting to the people that just don't wanna, not the people that don't have access, not in the 40%. That's going to be closer to the end. But it's one of those things that, like, I just can't stress the importance of it enough, for all the other people.
But both vaccines absolutely destroyed me. I was so ill for several. I got hit bad both times. But even having gone through that, from the stories I've heard, reading from doctors who've been dealing with COVID patients directly, I would take a third vaccine and go through that again than go through COVID itself. So, it's hugely important, even if you have to just be unsettled for a couple of days.
There's also people that are either immune compromised that can't get the vaccine because of whatever their reasons are. And also everybody in the country under 12 can't get vaccinated. Like it's only 12 and up, so like if you've got nieces, nephews, kids, friends, like it's good to do it just for other people. I mean, I've always, landed on the signs of science and progress. And like, I trust experts because that's why they're experts. So I don't have to go to school for 9 years to become an immunologist to know better. Like, I'm not going to read the 40-page document. I'm going to let someone else that knows what they're talking about read it and explain it to me. That's how that works. That's why there's experts.
But isn't there like a two paragraph post on Facebook? Is that not research? That seems to be what a lot of people go for.
We're not going to go down that road. We won't go down that road. We will be here all day, my friend, all day. But that leads me into something else that's changing, which is I'm going to go back to the gym. This is the first time since lockdown.
Ooh.
Yeah. I've been putting my membership on freeze. I Fit for Less has just said basically like you can freeze your membership for 30 days, every 30 days. They didn't really advertise it. There's just no penalty for it. It's not an expensive membership anyway. I just don't like paying for stuff that I'm not using. And so I realized that my membership lapse is coming up on the 26th and I'll be like fully vaccinated on the 30th. So I'm just like, well, that Monday, August 2nd or whatever that is, as far as my weekly schedule goes, probably a decent time to go back to the gym. And restrictions in the province are now to the point where I can go to the gym. And I think I still have to book appointments. Like I think they still have to know. I don't know if gyms are at full capacity. I know restaurants are. I have to look into this yet. I've got a couple weeks yet.
Oh,
but
didn't even know restaurants were.
Maybe not restaurants. Grocery stores are. That was the thing I meant to say.
Okay.
So, because I went grocery shopping on Saturday last, and it was uncomfortable. There was no person clocking numbers at the door. You can go in and out of any door that you wanted. The checkout was still the same. Line up, be assigned to checkout and go through. I hope they keep that. That's the best way to go through a checkout. It doesn't matter whether it's COVID or not. It's way more efficient.
Yeah.
And like it's one of those things where it's free enough. And with me being vaccinated, I definitely feel more comfortable going back to the gym. And also, as we were mentioning, just a little discussion pre-show, like I'm feeling, despite being able to jog outside and stuff, my schedule is pretty busy, and I feel like I need more weight training, more strength training, not just the cardio. So I just do a lot of sitting for what I do, and I need to get back into it. And I had made some really decent progress in terms of getting back into shape before COVID. Like I had been in the gym maybe 6 months before COVID hit. So it didn't take me very long to snap back into shape, but I had just gone through that process of like really feeling like I was getting back into it, and then I had to stop going. So I'm looking forward to that. Just because it just kind of gives that semblance of normalcy again, you know?
Yeah, and especially after COVID, I mean, I'm certainly out of shape compared to what I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't necessarily a great shape, but it was certainly a
better one. And you got to remember too, like when there's nothing to do in the wintertime in Nova Scotia, like you've got nothing to do but sit home. Like you can't. There's no outside for half the year that's pleasant, right?
And that's one of the reasons I got a treadmill.
Oh, nice.
For my place was so that in the winter months I now have a way of keeping active, and my old TV that I had in my bedroom I upgraded from a 1080p to a 4K. So the 1080p one happens to fit perfectly in the window, just on the window ledge, where my treadmill is pointed at it. So I can now just sort of go on my treadmill, watch Twitch videos, watch YouTube, just catch up on things.
Nice.
While still remaining active. And I'm hoping that will actually encourage me, because I find going to a gym, especially on my own, essentially when I was back at university, I used to go to the gym with a friend, and I just found that so much easier motivational wise, especially as I had to be accountable to him as well, to be that otherwise he's going on his own. So that was good motivation for me, but trying to just go to the gym on my own, I find really difficult. So having it at home and being like, I'm not eating into time that I would normally be spending watching YouTube anyway, I can just do so in a more healthy manner.
And when you want to catch up on stuff like that, when there's a lot of content creation happening, and I mean, you run into the same problem that I do probably, is that there's just not enough time to watch all the stuff that you want. You know, like I've been guilty this past week aside, because I've just been having trouble sleeping with the heat and humidity until I got the AC. But I find that I've been, what's it called? Sleep procrastination. It's basically like you're tired, it's 10 p.m., but you're not going to bed because you haven't had any time today to play video games or watch Netflix or do something fun and cool. All you've done is adult all day long. And so screw bedtime. Like it's like you're 6 again. You're just like, I want to play with the toys. I don't want to go to bed. Like, I don't want to go do the sleep thing. And I don't
think that's changed for me since I was 6.
Well, yeah.
It's just life.
But yeah, I've noticed that I've done this a lot, where I'm up a little bit later than I should. Not like, you know, if I'm up until 2, that's out of like not wanting to be. But like if I'm up until midnight when I should go to bed at 11, it's because I want to do something cool, you know, because I've been working, you know, as an entrepreneur, you put in a lot of hours. And so stuff like that I find is it's nice when you can get in things like exercise. And for me, it's listening to podcasts. Like if I'm walking to the gym, I'm knocking out a couple of my daily podcasts on that 40-minute walk to the gym, you know. With your TV and your home gym, like, is there other tech that you've got going on?
I feel like it's complete for the most part. I've in addition to that, because it's one of those manual treadmills, so you have to actually put in the effort yourself.
Okay.
Rather than an electric one, because also a lot cheaper.
Well, yes.
Yeah. I've also got a bar that is for doing sit-ups with, and you can do pull-ups as well. And so it just latches onto the top of the door frame for pull-ups. So that's something I'm going to be using. I might get myself a skipping rope, or jump rope, I think is the other advertised. And so I hope to use that. Now, I can't use that in that room because it's far too small. That's going to be one of those go out in the car somewhere, find somewhere secluded where nobody can see me, and then embarrass myself in private. And then I've got, and this is probably the thing that I love the most, is a mat. Just a massive, oversized exercise mat from a company called S36. I had a yoga mat originally, and I just found that whenever I was doing stretches or anything like that, I'm immediately off the mat. It was also kind of thin, And one thing that I've learned just from looking around is that the price you pay is definitely reflective on the quality.
Yeah.
The more you pay for a mat, you do definitely get more. It's not one of those like, oh, some places kind of rip you off and stuff. And because I've got an Apple TV hooked up, I've got the Fitness Plus service, which allows me to basically have a personal trainer there effectively. And they had these absolutely massive oversized mats that looked fantastic. And I went on Reddit and found somebody who'd figured out which mat it was that they were using for that. And the owners of the company, because it turns out it's a family-run business, they confirmed that it was indeed them that had partnered. And so they just said, look, for anybody, this is public. Anybody who wants to get one of these mats, you can use a promo code, and they just use the word Apple, and you get 10% off. And I went on, worked, and so it worked out. It was free shipping in North America, and it came down to about $188 Canadian. So pretty pricey, but they are really thick mats. They're really large. They're like 4x6. And they do not move. That was one of the other problems I had with the yoga mat, was it would slide around. The grip on this thing, it is as solid as the floor itself. Just will not budge no matter what I do. And you can use it with, like, you can either do it barefoot, you can use shoes on it. Apparently it wears over time as well, so the more you use it, the better it becomes. But it has just completely changed that room, and it makes me more... I'm not sure what the word would be. Somewhere between excited and inclined to, I suppose, more motivated really to actually go and use it.
Yeah, no, there's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than wanting to work out, knowing how to work out, and not having either the right equipment or having crappy equipment.
That's it. Yeah, and that's how I felt with the yoga mat. It's like, well, I just feel like I'm just going to end up injuring myself, because the moment your knees are on the floor, like it's painful. Whereas with this, it's so comfortable, and I can do it. The only thing that I'm considering getting just to really finish things off is possibly weights. I'm thinking that maybe that would be the one thing that I'm probably missing, and so I need to do more research into that and see what's good. I know you've worked with weights before.
Oh, I've got weights. I've got some loaner weights. I've got some of my own, but I've also got loaner weights from Laura, who wasn't using them because her gym is really small. And she does mostly powerlifting, so she doesn't necessarily use or need dumbbells at home. She had them I think she got them very, very early on during the pandemic, where she just needed something at home until, they sorted out what they were going to do and when they were going to be allowed back in the gym and all that kind of stuff. But it's one of those things where I don't have the space. Like I work out in the 4 feet at the foot of my bed between that and the dresser. It's not a lot of space. I use them mostly for upper body stuff, because with the running, and I do push-ups and stuff when I go for a run. So like it's I'm the guy on the side of the road that's like, why is that guy doing push-ups on the sidewalk? And then he gets up and keeps on running. Like it sounds weird, but it's a better workout. Like for me, it's like getting some cross training and some interval training and a jog all in at the same time. And when you're as busy as I am, getting all that in a half an hour is actually kind of essential. So I don't need them for a lot, but they're good for smaller stuff, because I don't have anything over 25 pounds. So like it's not really a lot to move around. I could and should do more with them, but like I don't, until recently I don't have the space, or you've got the space. I still don't have the space. So I kind of have to find a spot in the apartment where I'm not going to bash stuff and just kind of do it there. I did find when I had a membership and it was going to Fit for Less earlier on last year, it's been a long time. So 2 years ago, that being able to go there, and even though sometimes I wasn't necessarily lifting heavier, well, no, that's a lie. I think in most cases I was lifting heavier than what I had at home. So it's a common case of like, one, there's enough room there that I can do whatever I want. It's a huge facility. And two, they have enough weights that if I wanted to do squats or, not deadlifts, but like rack pulls or anything like that, they have enough there that they can challenge me. I do have a chin-up bar at home, but there's only so much you can do, on one of those when you want to get into other things. I don't have like a rowing machine, and chest at home is particularly difficult because I don't have a bench. So there's all kinds of stuff like that I think is good to have at the gym. But yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since I've mentioned this on the show, because it's certainly not how I identify anymore. But when I was in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s, I was an amateur bodybuilder. So like I don't have a lot of problem getting motivated to work out, because I just have to turn that switch back on and I'm just like, yep, here we go. You know, like it's a skill that I have acquired. I really enjoy training. It's just that I'm now 20 years older, and I have to just take it a little bit easier. The ego has to stay at the door, which is also something I'm pretty good at. But it's definitely something that I really do feel like I need to have weight training in my routine. I've been jogging outside for years and doing some cross training. You and I have done some hikes and stuff like that. And it's satisfying, but my body needs more than that. Like I really feel like I'm in much better shape. And I want to be clear. I am not going back into like a bodybuilding regime, because one, I don't want to eat that much. And two, like I cannot spend 3 hours a day in the gym. Like I'm going to go back to probably 3 to 4 days a week, you know, weak point training, stability training, basic movements. Been inspired actually quite a bit by Laura, who, and I mean this is the biggest compliment. She works out like it's a job, and she trains extraordinarily hard, and she's very dedicated, and she sees results. She gets stronger every time she tests her strength. And it's awesome to see. And it really has kind of like reiterated something that I've already known, which is the basic movements: squats, bench press, deadlifts. You will get stronger. You will get healthier. They work everything almost all at the same time. Bench being a little bit less so, but like those two big ones, squats and deadlifts, they work basically head to toe. And she does accessory work, but most of the time, those are the big lifts that she's focusing on. And so when I go back, deadlifts might not be good for me with my back issues, but things like, you know, moderate weight for squats, you know, doing some rack pulls, like stuff that's bigger, broader, and less dumbbell focused. It's also really fun just because it's different. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think that's another thing for me, is just wanting to have a bit more variety. Like before, when I just had the treadmill, that was great. But it was like, I need more.
Talking about the exact opposite, which is sitting around on our butts watching things on Netflix, I think we should probably get into what we've been watching. I'm going to kick things off with Gunpowder Milkshake. And I will asterisk this with, I didn't finish it because it's awful. But it's sad that it's awful, because it had some potential. Right. Well, here, Karen Gillan, Paul Giamatti, Lena Headey, Carla Gugino, I can't remember how to pronounce her last name, Michelle Yeoh, Angela Bassett, and then there's a kid in it played by Chloe Coleman. Like that's a cast, right? Like that's got some potential, right? It has a 66% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got a 5.9 out of 10 on IMDb. Not normally something that I put a lot of stock in, but normally when something on Rotten Tomatoes, both of these things are bad for you. When Rotten Tomatoes has it as a sub 70, it's usually a pretty bad movie. Like it's usually not very good. I bailed on it. I wanted to get back into it. I was going to try and watch it last night to try and force myself to finish it, to talk about it on the show today. I just couldn't do it. I tried it. I watched 5 minutes. It's like, nope, I just don't really care. It's really campy. Like it's really over the top, kind of like campy gun violence action shtick. But in my opinion, it's not in a good way. It can't decide if it wants to be Sin City, John Wick, Kill Bill, or all of them at the same time. It's just all over the map, and it's too bad, because the world that it presents to you in the first little while is actually really cool. You've got a female assassin and her daughter. They become estranged because the female assassin has to leave town to save her life and her daughter's life. And so the assassin Sam, or the girl, sorry, Sam, grows up. That's played by Karen Gillan. like hating her mother for leaving, but she's also now taken up the family business, and so she's the daughter of a famous assassin, and she's also an assassin. Like it reads like a comic book, right? And you would think it would be, but it's not actually. I looked it up. I thought this is got to be a cult comic to get this many stars behind it, and to get on Netflix as a film. Like this must have some sort of cult following already. Nope, it's an original screenplay. It's an original story by co-writers Nevo Papachado and Eude Lavsky. Hope you're pronouncing your names right. They're very difficult. So it's an original story. So props for the imagination. Yeah. But it's just the execution. And like, it's also like this neon noir 50s style. So like all the meetings are happening in diners where this like bubble gum popping waitress comes up and tells you to put your guns in the cookie jar because there's no guns allowed in the diner, and everybody has guns because it's like this undercity, like the underbelly, terrible part of the city. And it's just got this kind of classy, retro, apocalyptic, not apocalyptic, like retro dystopian kind of vibe to it. So it starts off that way. But then when you get into the acting and the action, which is the huge part of this thing is action. Mostly it's action. I like Karen Gillan. I really enjoyed her in the Marvel films as Nebula. I've seen her in other things, not Doctor Who, where most people know her from. But yeah, I mean, a plot for effort. I guess she's terrible in this. Like she's just I feel like there are some actors where they just can't do badass. Like there's just you being grumpy does not make me feel like you're a badass, you know? Whereas like Keanu Reeves, for whatever reason, as nice as a dude as he is in real life, he really pulls off John Wick. Like you don't question that this guy is lethal, right? So in this, it's again, campy lines, a lot of grumpy acting. I feel like they spent a lot of their money on these cameos. Again, I haven't finished the film. My guess is that all of these headliners come back to help her save the day at the end. The plot is basically she is assigned to kill somebody. She screws up and walks into something that she wasn't supposed to or wasn't meant to. And then the group, the firm, basically mobsters that have hired her are now trying to kill her. And she visits some old friends of her mom's to then get geared up to then save the day. And she was supposed to kill somebody and she didn't because the guy had a kid and she didn't want to orphan the kid, which is what happened to her. And so the rest of the film is her dragging around this 9-year-old through the bloodiest gun violence I've seen in film in a long time. To the point where it makes you uncomfortable that there's a 9-year-old in the film. Like, it's just like, I know it's all fake, but this actor, this 9-year-old kid, is in the middle of all of this. And
a little bit like Chloe Moretz, isn't it, from in Kick-Ass?
Yeah.
Just kind of like that, kind of like, okay, this is a very, very violent scene where, you know, involving lots of guns and stuff, and she's very young.
Yeah. So Chloe Coleman is the name of the actor. She's 13 now, so she would have been around 11 when they filmed this in 2019, 2020. So like it's still uncomfortable. I mean, the kid is grossed out by it. Like she's acting and she's like, oh gosh, that was really scary and stuff like that. And it feels just tacked on, and I get it. Like, and it works out in some fun ways later on. So one of the shining moments in the film comes from one of the worst moments in the film. So when Sam tries to not, I guess, spoilers, when Sam tries to not kill her target and save him instead, he's brought to a doctor's office. And then the thugs that are out to kill Sam, she beats the snot of them. They're also at the doctor's office. And the doctor says, I'm going to help you guys get her because the firm has told me I should help you. So instead of going in to help Sam with her wounds and giving her like a tetanus shot or something for her bullet wound, instead of drugging her and handing her over to the firm, he instead gives her 2 injections, 1 in each arm, which makes her arms go numb. She's still perfectly awake. So he's a doctor with a syringe, and the thing that he decided to give her was to make her arms go numb, not knock her out. Like, just Stupidest thing ever. But
somebody who would have the medical knowledge to properly deal with that.
Exactly. The resulting gunfight involves Sam convincing Emily, this is the 9-year-old, to tape her gun to her hand and tape a scalpel to her other hand. Then Sam proceeds to go into the hallway, and the only way that she can raise her gun high enough to pull the trigger, I don't know how she can pull her trigger, her arms are supposed to be numb, is to spin herself. You ever let your arms go kind of loose, and then as you spin, centrifugal force kind of pulls your arms out? So that's what she has to do through the entire fight. So it's like this ragdoll, weird calamity of errors gunfight with thugs that have already been beaten up. So one guy's in a wheelchair, another guy's on crutches, and the other guy, I can't remember what happened to him. He's got like a head wound or something. So like they're all kind of stumbling around. It is the worst fight scene ever. All the fight scenes are pretty poorly choreographed. It looks like I've seen better fights on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Like it's rough, man. It's not convincing in the least. But all that is to say that it did lead to what I thought was a very fun action sequence, which is then Emily and Sam have to get away, and they have to go in the getaway car. Well, Sam can't use her arms. So 9-year-old Emily is sat on top of Sam's lap. Sam is using her feet to push the pedals and do the gas and the brake. In what apparently it's being driven. It's an automatic car, but it's being driven like a standard. It's really funny. So she has to teach Emily in like 5 minutes how to steer the car, how to put it in drive and reverse. And they're trying to get out of this parkade. So after this crazy action, ragdoll sequence, Emily and Sam are trying to drive out of this parking lot at like 10 miles an hour because, of course, Emily's all over the place with the steering wheel. Enter in more mobsters trying to kill them. Now, Sam's in a bulletproof car because she's an assassin. So she just kind of tells Emily, don't worry about the bullets. They can't get in here. And so Emily, being just this fearless kid, is unflinched by bullets bouncing off the windshield. And then Sam is shouting out like crazy, left now, right now, reverse, drive, as she's like flooring it around this parking garage. And it's really funny to see this 9-year-old kid like doing this action sequence. Like I would imagine the two of them, I would love to see outtakes from that sequence, because I imagine the two of them had an absolute blast. Now, I'm sure there's a stunt driver in some of the scenes and like they're not always in the car, but any of the shots where they're actually in the car driving around, I would imagine the two of them just had an absolute blast. I wish more of the film had that kind of vibe to it. And unfortunately, there's not enough humor in Act 1 to set it up as a comedy, so that when you get into Act 2 or you get into the action sequences where they're trying to push, trying to get away and the real chase of the rest of the film is happening, the funny stuff is like, this wasn't set up as a comedy. This is supposed to be like a dark, gritty assassin film. And so when it starts to go funny, just like, this is slapsticky, like American Pie, stuff. It's like, I don't understand why this is going in so many different directions. So it can't decide when it wants to be.
Does it feel like a complete genre shift in the movie then?
The action sequences feel like TV show stuff. And then the establishing shots and the mood shots and all that, feels very film-like. Campy film-like. If you've seen Sin City or what was the other one that came after that? The Spirit or something? There was a couple of Sin City films, but like it's got that kind of a vibe in how it's stylized and stuff like that. And the lines that Gillian gives are very like kind of film noir, like I've never been the sentimental type, as like someone bleeds to death on the floor, or like whatever it is. Like there's stuff like that. So it has those kind of like bits of camp, but it just goes too far, which is unfortunate. So I can't really recommend it. However, I'm calling it now. There's going to be lots of Sam cosplay at the next time that we're allowed to all get together at a convention. Guarantee you that there are going to be people that are either going to love this because it's so bad. I'm not one of those people. Or there's going to be people that just legitimately like these kind of films. And if it's for you, you're going to love it, because Sam's costume, her she's forced to change attire by some bad guys at some point in the film. She ends up wearing like a bowling alley jacket. And it's got this
kind of yellow from the poster you sent me.
Yeah, earlier. So it's got this like bowling alley vibe. So there's going to be, it's a very, very iconic look. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why it has like a Kill Bill vibe to it, is because the bowling jacket reminds you of like the jumpsuit that Uma Thurman wears in Kill Bill.
Right.
But yeah, like there are some iconic moments and there are some iconic shots, but I don't necessarily know, like, I can't see it doing very well. Like, it rose to be super popular on Netflix in Canada and fell within 3 days. Like, it was like number 2 in Canada, like not even on the charts 3 days later. It was just like,
wow.
Yeah, people are just like, wow. Yeah. And no, we're not even going to consider that.
Like you were saying, the vibe of like the 50s with the diner and this, and this jacket and stuff, like it, like, and I caught a bit of the trailer earlier. Visually, it does look very good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of color in there. It's very bright and vibrant in a lot of places,
which I was on board for.
Yeah. And when you have a film that just switches genres, it's just it's so frustrating, because it's you're just not getting what you set out for, really.
Yeah.
And there's been a couple of movies I've had like that before. It's almost worse when you have a trailer that advertises as a movie as one thing and you find out it's something completely different.
Hi folks, Joel from the future here to let you know that due to some technical difficulties, scheduling, and just the amount of time it took to edit and publish episode 409 of the Citadel Cafe, Masters of the Universe Revelation has since come out and I have watched it in its entirety. I'm about to talk about and speculate on the show from the trailer here on episode 409. And because of the timing of the release of this episode, I thought I should pop in and say, like, hey, I've seen it. I will be talking about it on the next episode of the Citadel Cafe, so look forward to that. Until then, you can just listen to me speculate about the show based on the trailer and see if I was right or wrong. The other thing, speaking of trailers, that I've been checking out, and we'll say reserving my judgment until I actually get to watch it, but this Friday, Masters of the Universe Revelations is going to hit Netflix the 23rd, and the full trailer is out on YouTube. Has been for a little while, actually. I just didn't catch it until this week. I'm hoping this lives up to the hype. The story sounds interesting. The voiceover from... I think there's a voiceover from, it sounds like the Sorceress of Grayskull, but then also from Tila, is that magic on Eternia is dead and or dying. And Tila has fought for years to be free of magic because of trauma that it cost her in the past. And is now conflicted as she has been asked to fight to save it alongside He-Man and all the other Masters of the Universe. And so that sounds like an interesting take. It did sort of tweak my brain to the fact that I forgot that He-Man's physical form was magical.
Right. Okay.
Like, yeah. They say it. It's not a secret. It's in the opening line of the show. Like, just like the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, like, just done. Like, just your magic. I get it. But because he's such a physical dude, like, he doesn't go around zapping things with lightning. He basically just punches stuff. Like, that's his MO. And so
his magical power is just expanding muscles.
Yeah, exactly. So in the same way that DC's Captain Marvel is magic, like Billy Batson is magic, right? And I'm just like, dang it, because I don't like Captain Marvel in DC. I don't like the idea of magic in my superheroes. It drives me nuts. So the fact that I'm now realizing that He-Man is a magical superhero, I'm just like, darn it, that's not what I wanted to do. But some of the character designs look really cool. Orko looks different, looks cool. Beastman looks like an orc from World of Warcraft. Like, he's huge. And he's really well drawn, looks really cool. He's still orange and fuzzy, but like, he just has that kind of stature. What was the other character design that was really neat? Man-at-Arms looks pretty cool. He-Man looks okay. I'm on the fence about He-Man. But then
I do like that he like, when he does transform, like, he seems to even grow taller.
Oh,
like,
yeah. No, he totally does.
Definite sense of how big he becomes.
So in the original cartoon, it was kind of like a Clark Kent Superman thing where Prince Adam was basically the same size. He just had a higher voice and got a little bit bigger. Took his shirt off. But in this one, he's like, and there's been other cartoons of He-Man over the years where Prince Adam is actually like a teenager. And so to make it more attractive to kids. And so that when he turns into He-Man, he really does change very much like a Billy Batson Shazam sort of idea, or Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
So with this one, Prince Adam looks like he's an adult, but a very young adult, like early 20s sort of idea. But he's definitely a skinny dude. And so when he turns into He-Man, he very much changes in physical size. They also did that with the recent She-Ra cartoon. She-Ra in the recent Netflix cartoon, very different style than this one. But she's like a 10-foot tall character when she's She-Ra. Like she's taller than everybody. She grows by 1.5 feet easily from Aurora. But yeah, so this is different in that way. But then other character designs look really phoned in. Or changed in ways that are not appealing. Like Teela looks awful. She's supposed to be an appealing character. She's supposed to be, in some ways, I think, a love interest for Adam and for He-Man. But like it's just not an attractive character design for one of your lead characters. I'm all for her being, muscular. Like she's supposed to be a warrior. I like the fact that they don't have her in like a plunging neckline like they had in the 80s. Like she's got armor. Her chest plate is a chest plate. Like it looks like a bulletproof vest. As it should.
Actually protective.
Yeah, because in He-Man, you've got swords and shields and guns, like all at the same time, and lasers. Like there's all kinds of stuff going on. So like protection makes sense. Plus, her dad is man at arms. Like he's got, that's his MO is I have the gear. So like it makes sense. But then Evelyn, like it looks like they just put a different head on Teela. They just kind of copied. Where Evelyn is supposed to be a sorceress, and she's like all the iterations that I've seen of her over the years have always been kind of like witch-like kind of scrawny. Her power doesn't come from her physical presence; it comes from her ability to wield magic and stuff. So like it feels kind of phoned in on some of the other things. Again, I'll leave judgment till I actually see it, especially when it comes to the animation. I thought your trailer was supposed to have the best animation in it. There is some dodgy stuff in this trailer. I'm just like, whoa, what was that? Like that didn't even look good,
I mean, you obviously come from a background of animation.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
For me, like I just as a consumer of animation, like I don't know a lot of the details that you're probably picking out. But one thing that did feel very clear to me is it felt like a mishmash of animation styles.
Yep.
Like you've got some very modern sort of 3D glowing animations and stuff. And then you've got stuff that looks kind of like a lot of other shows are kind of made these days. And then some stuff that does almost hark back to what the original show looked and felt like. But when you mix it all together, it does feel like just a mishmash of things.
Yeah, there's an anime style to a certain amount of things. There's a certain economy in anime animation. It's very often about the design of things and the story, not necessarily how things move all the time. However, this to me from the trailer smacks of pushing it out the door quickly. This is what animation looks like when it's rushed, right? It just has to get approved by a certain date. You can't redo it. You get some inexperienced animator that's in there that doesn't do a very good job, and then they have to keep it because of time constraints. They've had all the time in the world, and Netflix has got more money than God. There's no reason for this to look shitty. None.
Unless they were trying to get the trailer complete and out the door. That's the only
maybe, but
perhaps this is.
But no, but looking at the trailer, like it's clips from multiple episodes, right? Like it's not. The trailer isn't animated for the trailer. The trailer is clips of other parts of the show. Animation is expensive. There's no way that they would do a specific trailer.
Oh, right, yeah. So that would already be locked in at that point.
So I anticipate the first episode to probably be pretty well animated and then other episodes to fall off in quality. That's basically how it usually rolls with stuff like this. So that's unfortunate. I'm trying not to focus on it, but it's a hard switch for me to turn off. And I think the biggest problem is that there's no excuse for it. Like this is an existing IP that has a bunch of 40-year-old nerds that are just like, give it to me now. Like take my money, Netflix. And like, you've got a captive audience, literally, and I really wish that they had, well, I shouldn't say that. I haven't seen it yet. I hope that they put the time and effort in that they should have. I can forgive a little bit of shoddy animation if it's a good story, but like if some of the best action sequences or some of the, moments in are just like, when I look at something and my reaction is, who drew that? Like that, how did that get approved? What supervising animator said that's good enough for television? Let that go. That's where I kind of check out and be like, what is going on? Because that kind of stuff really pulls me out of it. Sometimes you can have like some things are better than others, and explosions or action sequences can be kind of funky and whatever. And that's fine. And I'm okay with stylistic things. Like sometimes anime can be like, they can have static holds. Sometimes there's a lot of dramatic head talking and stuff. Stylistically, for something from the first trailer, I'm not a really big fan of like He-Man's pointy nose, pointy chin, crazy-eyed grin. Like that's a stylistic choice. It's still very well drawn. It's just like that. It just looks terrible to me. It's like if Superman had, I don't know. I'm trying to think of another, like an actor that's got like long, narrow features. For example,
like Nicolas Cage, who originally was going to be Superman.
But let's go with a good actor. Let's go with Tom Hiddleston. Tom Hiddleston is capable of doing Superman, but physically doesn't look like him. You know what I mean? Like he's slender. He doesn't have a big nose or a big chin, but he's got kind of angular, more pointy features than the average, say, Chris Evans, who looks more like a Captain America. You can't imagine Loki playing Captain America and Captain America playing Loki, right? Like you can't flip those in your brain in the same way that I can't put pointy nose and pointy chin on He-Man. Like the character design in the 80s was big and broad and kind of square headed. Like it was very much a Conan look. Like that's kind of what you wanted to go for. Anyway, I'm going on about this trailer. It's worth watching. It's colorful. I love that they're not making it all grim and gray. Like Merman is green, Beastman orange. Like they're using the primary colors. It's fine. So I'm looking forward to that. But it's just going to be a trip down memory lane, which I think is going to be hopefully at least fun for the first few episodes. And I'm looking forward to that. That's this Friday, July 23rd. So what's been on your screen lately, man?
If we're sticking with trailers, I recently just saw the next Pixar trailer for a film called Turning Red. It's still a ways off yet because it's supposed to release around March 11th, 2022. So still some time. But it does seem like a really fun concept. It's a coming-of-age movie where you've got a 13-year-old girl called Mei Li, and she suddenly poofs into a giant red panda whenever she gets too excited. And the description for the film says, which is practically always. And something that I've read is that apparently she's devoted to a boy band. And so when you've got a 13-year-old obsessed with a boy band, like she's going to be turning into this panda a heck of a lot. But it also seems to happen when she's under intense stress from her overbearing mother. Because the trailer has her in school. Her mother is basically spying on her from outside to the point that a security guard is coming in and just going, "Why are you spying on these kids?" And Mei Li is in class, completely embarrassed, and then ends up turning into this giant red panda. But it seems pretty fun, and again, very, very colorful in the way that the Pixar always are. And I think it's actually set in Canada, because when she's in school, she's got a hat which has maple leaves over it, and then when she's at home, she's got a shirt with a big Canadian red maple leaf on the front as well. So I think it's actually potentially set here in Canada, which is going to be cool.
Nice. I wonder if it's like Vancouver, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. There is an opening shot of the school. I didn't really... Well, it's twofold. One, I didn't really pay much attention to the surrounding area that they were showing to try and figure that out. But two, I also don't know Canada well enough for it to have really made a difference for me to figure out where it was set. But that seems cool. And I love the tagline as well. Growing up as a beast. I think works really well for it.
It feels like they've been just pumping out film after film after film, but it's pretty much the same schedule. They're doing like 2 films a year. I've got like Toy Story 4, 2019. Onward is 2020. Soul was 2020, end of 2020. Luca was just in June of this year. I haven't seen it yet.
Me neither. That's still on my to watch list.
Turning Red is March 2022. And then Lightyear is June 2022. So they're basically doing like every 6 months there's a Pixar release. I don't remember when they started doing 2 per year. I thought it was only ever just 1. I know that there was like the Disney stuff, like Frozen and that stuff. Yeah. And then there's Pixar is still separate. But this, I thought Soul, Luca, and Turning Red, I had heard about them. And I was like, okay, I know that Soul was Pixar. But then I was like, which one is Luca? Is that Disney or is that Pixar? But Luca and Turning Red are both Pixar.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been surprised at how many coming out, because it's like, I think I'd even missed the fact that Luca had even gotten released because, pandemic life.
Yep.
And I'm a sucker for anything Pixar.
Yes, they do a really good job. I'm actually embarrassed to say that I haven't seen Soul yet. I think I wasn't in the right place to watch it, maybe.
Yeah, it took me, I think from wanting to sit down and watch it to actually watching it, I think was probably at least a month, if not 2.
Oh, you've seen it?
It's just, yeah, I have, yeah. But again, it was kind of like, and I'm going to be watching a movie about people who've died and who are ghosts and stuff. Like, I almost felt like I still have to be in the right mood. And also knowing that Pixar are very, very good at tugging on those emotional
yes.
things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're very
and just
good.
kind of like, okay, if I'm going to end up crying, like, I need to be in a mood where I'm okay to do that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Which is,
yeah. Luca looks like a lot of fun. It looks like a really cool cultural trip. It's set in Italy. At least I think it's set in Italy. The only reason I haven't watched it, I think Luca is still under the premium banner, or maybe that's Raya and the Last Dragon. Raya and the Last Dragon is the last Disney one, right? That's the most recent Disney animated film. Yeah. Disney Plus, they're eventually going to be on Disney Plus for everybody to watch, but for the first little while that they're out there, you have to pay a premium, which is usually around $35 Canadian to watch it. Great if you're a family of 4, but when you're just one person, it's a little bit steep when you know it's coming a couple months later to the regular rotation. I find with Pixar films, especially because things like Turning Red, Luca, we'll leave Soul aside, but other films that have been out, like what was it called? I just mentioned it a second ago. The one where the 2 brothers go across the country in a van.
Onward.
Thank you. Really fun films, like really cool films. Yeah. I prefer to share them with people. Like I kind of want it, I want it to be an evening when like Laura's got some time, or, when the bubble is expanded and I can have people over to watch a movie. Like I like sharing them with people like that. I have embarrassingly not watched many movies on the new TV that are worth it, like new 4K, like HD streaming stuff. I've watched some series, like Mandalorian and Captain America, or Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Oh, sorry, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But yeah, like I want to watch Luca, but I kind of want to share that experience with somebody. Anything else gracing the small screen?
I recently watched Clarkson's Farm, which is a British series on Amazon Prime, following Jeremy Clarkson, who a lot of people will know from either old Top Gear and more recently the Grand Tour. Because back in 2008, he bought a farm, and he basically just owned the land, and there was a farmer running the whole place. And that chap retired. And so Clarkson's just there, well, who's going to run the farm now? And he just decided, well, why doesn't that just be me? And he is completely out of his depth. And this is not like fiction. This is a documentary. So this is all for real.
Is it a film or a series?
It's a series. Yeah. So limited run series. I think it's something like 7 episodes, maybe 8, something around there. Not many. And he's just thinking, like, how difficult can it be? You put seeds in the ground, you wait a while, you take the seeds out, and you sell them. And it is a complete eye-opener as to how difficult farming actually is. It is very educational. He not only is it just far harder than I imagined farming would be, but it's also astonishing to think that farmers can even make any profit without government grants helping them in the first place. And some of the cost of just the equipment alone almost boggles the mind as to how you would even get started as a farmer. But the series also took place at a very interesting time because it happened during one of the worst periods of weather the UK has had for several decades, where there was just constant downpour, and then the pandemic hit as well. So in the middle of the series, suddenly lockdown happens. So it's just even greater challenges that he's facing. And in true Jeremy Clarkson style, he just keeps making one big stupid mistake after another. He keeps, whenever the people that he's working with tell him how to do one thing, whenever he's given a rule, his immediate instinct is to try and break it. Like, he just can't help himself. This is just how Jeremy Clarkson is. So it's just constantly him just going, no, I've got a better idea. I'm going to do it this way, and completely botches it up. And it is quite enjoyable watching some of these people like Caleb, who's this 20-year-old farmer who's been working on the farm for years, just having a massive go at him and shouting match and just telling him how much of an idiot he is. But there is just a perfect mix of characters. Like Caleb is just constantly despairs at Clarkson's stubbornness. He has an absolute hatred of city life and loves the countryside. So Clarkson sends him into London to sell some things, much to his disappointment. There's also a guy called Cheerful Charlie who always comes in to give what really is just bad news. Whenever Clarkson's done something, it's like, well, you can't do that because there's this law, there's this regulation that you have to fulfill and stuff. But he always delivers it very politely. He's almost almost feels like a very small village vicar in the way that he's delivering all of this bad news. But Cheerful Charlie is just great. And it's beautifully shot as well, which is not surprising given that it's Amazon Prime and they have the Grand Tour, and Clarkson obviously is going to be working with a very similar crew. But it is a fantastically entertaining and educational series. And I don't know how Canadian farming would equate to it, or North American stuff. I would imagine that there's probably similar challenges. This is obviously very British focused. And so for me, it's kind of like, I understand British farms to an extent. But yeah, I had no idea, and neither did he. And one of the things that I do respect about Jeremy Clarkson is that he'll constantly shout about how, like, people who drive tractors, are complete idiots because they just go really slow and stuff. And now that he's actually in the driving seat of those tractors, he's very upfront about going, okay, I was wrong all those years on Top Gear mocking tractor drivers.
Right. Well, that's good. Because I'm not a big reality TV show fan, and I'm not a car guy. So I know who Jeremy Clarkson is because I've seen the advertisements on YouTube, and I've seen, I'm an Amazon Prime member. So like I see this series advertised, and I actually looked at it. So like, that actually might be interesting, but it's just like, I'm not a reality TV guy. And the one thing that I definitely will get me to check out of a series like this is if it is just rich person behaving badly. Like if that's the shtick, I may not last very long. But if he's apologetic about it, like if he learns a lesson,
he does,
then and is able to admit it, then that might be the saving grace. Because if it's just one person being this particular way and unchanging throughout the series, that drives me nuts, because that just defies common sense, right?
Yeah. He's not playing it as a character. He himself is just, the way that Jeremy Clarkson is just the way that Jeremy Clarkson is.
Right.
And in a way, like, I'm not much of a car guy at all either, but the Top Gear and the Grand Tour has always been appealing to me because they approach it in a very open way that you don't have to understand that stuff. But for people who do, it's very obvious that they know their stuff.
Right.
But you go there for the interactions and the people and just how they are. And again, with this show, it's very much the case that all the people that are working on the farm along with Jeremy and having to put up with his nonsense, but him also going through some very emotional things. Like I don't want to give too much away, but he does end up getting sheep. And then there is the dilemma of, what happens to animals on a farm and where they end up. And the fact that he's also tied himself with an emotional bond to some of them. And, being reminded these aren't pets.
Right.
Yeah, this is produce in a way.
Yep.
And so seeing him go through that, like he does learn a lot, and seeing him reflect at the end is really the big reward from that journey.
Well, speaking of cars, we can move into the Internet Minute, which is, of course, brought to you by you, dear listener. The Citadel Cafe is 100% listener supported. If you're getting value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will get you an invite to the member-only Discord server. There are also multiple levels and different rewards like Discord roles and a bonus episode from time to time. Alastair and I are actually going to record a little bit of extra after the show today, talking about some video games. So check that out at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Currently at 24 patrons. Would love for there to be 25 before the end of July. That's always a goal, to have one more than the last month before. So check that out. Join the Discord, have some fun, and we'll see you on the other side of nerddom. I have an electric vehicle story this week. It's from cbc.ca. And it is called How Electric Vehicles Could Transform the Power Grid. And it is about bi-directional charging, which is basically what it says on the tin. Up until recently, electric cars would be charged up. They would then use that charge to get you around, and then you would have to recharge them some other way. And as charging stations and charging methods, like, I don't know, maybe a windmill in your backyard, one of those tulip windmills we talked about a couple of weeks ago in the show, maybe some solar panels, maybe that's how you charge your car. Well, what happens when the power goes out in your house? If you don't have enough of that stored up to charge your car, what are you going to do? How are you going to power the other things? Well, bi-directional charging takes this giant battery on wheels that you use to get around and says, hey, if your power goes out, you can use your car to keep your fridge cold, maybe keep your air conditioning on, and maybe keep you connected to the internet. Great things for safety. And say, I don't know, the cold snap that hit Texas a couple of months back, and they had huge rolling power outages, rolling brown and blackouts in California when forest fires are a thing and cause stress on the grid. Like, there's all these different reasons that you can use bi-directional charging to help kind of balance. And if you are a electric vehicle owner, depending on your power provider policy, so like, for example, in Nova Scotia, it's Nova Scotia Power, if you are using less than you are generating, then you can get money back or have a reduced power bill. So if you are using X, but then you're using your car to charge the grid, not just your home, but like putting power back into the grid, then you could save money, which is great. All around, it's just a win-win-win for bi-directional charging in vehicles.
It sounds like there's no bad side to this from the sounds of it.
No, the only thing I can think of is probably just adoption and or affordability would be, as the technology is fairly new. The only vehicles that are available in Canada right now with bi-directional charging are the Nissan Leaf and Mitsubishi's Outlander.
Okay.
Those are the only two plug-in hybrids that currently have bi-directional charging, according to Nova Scotia Power, actually. They're hybrids. They're not fully electric. So again, it's early for this to be widespread, but the other thing, of course, is like the oil and gas giants just making this more difficult, to get to than we need it to be. I mentioned something on the Render Distance, the extended version of the Spawn Chunk podcast I do with Pixar Riffs, that I'm going to repeat here. I think I've even mentioned it on Twitter before, but when you look at the pandemic and you look at the global effort to find a vaccine, produce a vaccine, distribute a vaccine globally. Granted, I know it's not going balanced globally, but still, like the fact that happened within 18 months of the pandemic being a thing is phenomenal in terms of the worldwide focus, the team effort, and the speed and rate at which that happened. If the same energy, the same, pardon the pun, the same amount of energy was put into solving the electric car problem or just the environment or alternate power sources in general, if the same fervor was put behind that, I would imagine we would see some leaps and bounds in this direction really fast. I don't have a link to this particular article. I read it several weeks ago, but it was basically a prediction that if Ford can come up with an electric F-150, which I believe they have, that is more powerful than a gas version, then it could single-handedly swing the United States in terms of electric vehicle adoption because of how many people drive an F-150 in the US and the fact that they need it because it needs to do a job. Like it needs to haul stuff. It needs to be powerful. And if the new electric one is more powerful than the gas guzzling one, then it's no longer a matter of ego. Like it's a matter of adoption. Like you just want to go. The only thing there is that does it become then price prohibitive? That's the thing. Whenever I've looked at electric vehicles, I always think like, woof, that is not a cheap car, you know. Hybrids currently are the more affordable version. So I don't know. I think it's fantastic. I didn't know about that bidirectional charging. It doesn't surprise me. I'm surprised it wasn't a thing already, I guess. It's really, really cool to see these kind of things happening. And I feel like there's been a fair amount of environmental stories kind of surfacing now that the pandemic is maybe not always top billing in the news. I feel like we're refocusing now on things that are more important because there's a lot of environmental crisis happening right now, especially in North America. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes. But I thought it was just a really neat idea, and how the Nova Scotia Power Corporation is being like forward facing and saying like, yeah, like if you get a bidirectional vehicle, you can put money back into the grid and potentially save on your power bill. Like I think less power bills are good for everybody, I think. So what's your pick this week?
Mine's from a YouTube channel called Dial the Gate, who make a ton of really cool Stargate focused stuff, and it's hosted by a guy who worked on Gate World, which is basically like the biggest fan site for Stargate. And they just in the last day or so posted a video called "Will Amazon Maintain or Reimagine Stargate Canon?" Because since Amazon bought MGM, they've obviously got a lot of licenses, a lot of franchises, and one of those is Stargate. So with Bezos saying that he wants to reimagine many of MGM's existing titles for the 21st century, that's had a lot of people panicked as to what that means for Stargate. Will they just reboot the whole thing? Especially when the original series creator, Brad Wright, is trying to work on a pitch for a continuation of the franchise as well. And it's not even guaranteed that Amazon will even go with Brad for that. So they've partnered with Jenny Stephen, who is an industry expert working with Clio Consulting, to get more of an inside look as to how this might actually apply to Stargate. And it's a very interesting insight into various streaming media strategies, just how this kind of stuff is organized from that top level, and especially following an acquisition like MGM. So to kind of dive into that, it seems really good. It also, because it is kind of a clickbaity title, the thought is that it's not going to go towards reimagining, that we probably will be looking at maintaining it. But just going through the details and just the thought processes is really worth a listen. First and foremost, if you're a Stargate fan, but also just if you're just interested in how a lot of properties are managed by a lot of these services, I think it is a good insight there, even if you're not into Stargate.
So as someone that is into Stargate, to someone that is not into Stargate, not that I didn't like it, I just never got into it. Is it not like multiple dimensions? Is that not how the Stargates work? Or is it we're all in one dimension, they're just traveling huge swaths of space with wormholes?
It's the latter. So you have our Milky Way galaxy, and there is a network of Stargates. In the original movie, we just think there's just one Stargate that you travel to, just a far-off distant planet. But it turns out that there's an entire network of them, which was the premise for the show SG-1, that they would travel to all of these different ones, and there's aliens that have dominion over a lot of places. Then they find that some of the gate builders went to another galaxy, and so there's another galaxy out there that has a network of Stargates, and so that was Stargate Atlantis. So just similar premise, but in a completely different place. And then they also later on came out with Stargate Universe, which is that the ancients who built the Stargates originally set out a ship that laid a path of Stargates, and then another ship that followed it with the idea that they'd be able to sort of travel, even further. And it's not just one galaxy; it's gone through multiple galaxies throughout the universe, throughout the entire time in history. Because we're stumbling, like when we see the show Stargate, it's all present day. It's present day people, present day military dealing with suddenly finding this very old, ancient alien technology, and suddenly being able to travel across the universe. But unlike Star Trek, where it's also in the future, it's present day.
Right.
And so very, very cool. But yeah, not really parallel dimensions at all.
Without the ability to like retcon or just write that stuff in the same way that you would with parallel dimensions, which I think is a mistake because it opens up just too many possibilities and writers get greedy. What would you prefer, to maintain or to reimagine Stargate canon?
To maintain it, for sure. There's just such a vast history that's been built up with it. The characters that they've had have been fantastic. A lot of the actors, when they've been asked by Brad Wright, because he runs a podcast and he's been interviewing a lot of the old cast and they've been reminiscing about production on the shows. They've all been like, yeah, we'd love to come back and do this. And the kind of feeling that you would get from those actors returning, just the camaraderie that's there and the characters that you've kind of grown up loving. I wouldn't want that rebooted and to start from scratch to especially as Stargate Universe was a very different format in that it wasn't really episodic as such. It really kind of started off a very long tail, and they only got to like the end of Act 1, kind of halfway through Act 2, and the series was cancelled. So there's still a lot of questions and answered, and it opened up so much more for them to do that they're not limiting themselves. I think, if anything, doing a reboot would probably limit them more.
Stargate Universe was the one that I watched. So that's why I never got into it, because it was the most recent one and it got canceled. So it didn't go anywhere.
And each Stargate series has been designed so that you can jump in without having watched the others.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that to really get Stargate Universe, you get more out of it having watched the rest of the stuff. The other thing was it was such a big shift in storytelling, partly because the writers wanted to do something different, that it did set off a lot of fans who just weren't quite ready for that shift in storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And then with ratings dropping, then it got cancelled. But the thing is, the last, I'd say 8 episodes are where you saw that the show was really getting good. And so it got cancelled at just the worst time.
Yeah, no, the rug, back when like it was more, well, I guess, no, streaming wasn't quite as big a thing back then. But yeah, like it definitely, the rug feels more like it's ripped out from underneath you when it's a TV series that you're investing like months and months and months watching, as it comes out weekly. But
and they also had 2 straight to DVD movies, and there was a third one planned that was supposed to wrap up a lot of stuff for SG-1 Atlantis, and because there was still a lot of, they planned it that way, that they were going to have this third one, but financial crisis at MGM coupled with streaming becoming more prominent and DVD sales dwindling just meant it wasn't really the right time to do it. And so again, there's still plenty more to tell, and long-term fans were like, that's what we're craving.
There's a fair amount of stuff that was coming out around the late aughts, like early 2010s, that just died because the industry was switching to streaming, and then just these other things were still trying to do the old model as the new model was taking off. It was just like they were sticking to their guns because they'd either already invested all the money in doing it that way or whatever, and they just floundered because it just like people were just not interested in waiting, right? Whereas if they had if Atlantis, no, not Atlantis, if Stargate Universe had come out in 2019 instead of 2009, when it eventually got canceled, it would have just gone to like a straight to Netflix. It would have, like if it was a television show by a network, Netflix or Amazon or somebody would have picked it up in the same way that The Expanse was taken over and done in a different way, right?
When DVDs were prime, there was a lot that they could predict with that. As things started to shift to streaming and it was all new territory, I think it was a lot riskier for a lot of studios as well, because they just didn't know what the outcome would be and whether it would be worth the investment.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can get info about the show and some of the links that Alastair and I talked about at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod. You can email the show at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com or find the show by name on Twitter. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube, and also Reason FM. Word of mouth is the easiest way to support the show. Just tell friends about the Citadel Cafe and where they can go to listen to it. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I'm doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio at joelduggan.com. Check out my other podcast, all about Minecraft, at thespawnchunks.com. And of course, you can follow me at Joel Duggan on social media. And I'll point you towards twitch.tv/Joel Duggan, where this week I'm going to be returning to the experimental snapshot for Caves and Cliffs in Minecraft. They have a second update to that snapshot. That's going to be really fun to check out. And of course, we're returning to the Citadel this weekend. Alastair, where can people find you online?
You can check out my website at alastairmcfly.com. You can also check out my Star Trek retrospective podcast, which I do with my co-host Trev over at longrangesensors.com. And you can also find me as Alastair McFly on both Twitter and also on Twitch.
Dude, great to have you back on the show.
It's been fun. I love being back here. I know I keep saying it, but it's because it's true.
Maybe we'll make it a regular thing.
I'd love that.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.